Well, this is Jim Fetzer, your host right here on Authentic News, RBN, live this first day of May 2025. We have India deploying aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, and missiles in the Arabian Sea after the terrorist attack in Kashmir, which I believe was a fabrication. So what do we got going? Gateway Hispanic reporting. India has deployed a colossal naval force in the Arabian Sea, a bold statement that rattled Pakistan following the recent terrorist attack in Kashmir, or so we have been told. While the global left indulges in pacifist sermons, New Delhi responds with steel, affirming its dominance in a region where weakness is not an option. The Indian Navy, with aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, and destroyers, began maneuvers on April 25th, according to the Ministry of Defense. These operations, set to continue until May, and of course we're now May 1st, come after a brutal attack on April 20th in Kashmir, where terrorists killed 2 Indian soldiers. I'm skeptical about the attack, not that India has put to sea. Meanwhile, here we have from RT, India planning military strike within 24 to 36 hours, Pakistan. Pakistan alleges India is planning a military strike on its territory, signaling a further escalation in tensions between the two nuclear-armed neighbors. Pakistan has credible intelligence that India intends to launch a military strike within the next 24 to 36 hours, using the Pahalgam incident as a false pretext, Islamabad's information minister, Alua Tara, wrote on X. As any kind of aggression will be met with a decisive response, India will be fully responsible for any serious consequences in the region. Notice, they're calling it out as a fabricated event, just as have I. Meanwhile, and we can hope things will simmer down, here we have a report. Putin maintains demand for full control of Ukrainian oblasts claimed by Russia for the peace deal. Russian President Vladimir Putin continues to demand full control of 4 Ukrainian oblasts claimed by Russia as a condition for a peace deal, Bloomberg has reported. The report said Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, sought to convince Putin to drop the demand and agree to a ceasefire that rose the current battle line, but the Russian leader declined, maintaining his demand for complete control of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. The Financial Times reported last week Putin was willing to freeze the current battle lines for a peace deal, but the Kremlin quickly signaled this was not the case. And well, he should. The vast effort Russia has made here, he's entitled, in my judgment. Ukraine has lost the war. Russia has won. He holds all the cards. Meanwhile, we have Paul Craig Roberts talking about what's going on here. Moscow's conditions for peace between diplomacy and force. That's very appropriate as a theme. So what do we got? Sorry about that. The story slipped. Here we go. Dear readers, as you know, my interpretation of the Ukrainian peace negotiation is substantially different from that of the official narrative. I decided to ask experts for an explanation of what the Russian view of the peace negotiation would be. Even Andronov, director of strategic consulting firm, obliged me with an answer as follows. Moscow's conditions between diplomacy and force. Despite numerous statements, primarily coming from Western media and politicians, Today, it cannot be unequivocally stated the Russian authorities are seriously considering the possibility of freezing the conflict with Ukraine along the current line of conduct. Russian politicians, as well as public and behind-the-scene experts, view such a scenario with extreme skepticism. If we carefully study the Russian media field and the statements of officials, everything is essentially reduced to the position set out by President Putin last June at the board meeting of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. It envisioned clearing Ukrainian troops from the territories of the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic, as well as the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, which became part of Russia in 2022 after local referenda. Putin stressed Ukrainian forces must withdraw beyond the administrative borders of those territories, as recorded on maps of the former Soviet SSR at the time of the Soviet Union's dissolution. There have been no recent reinterpretations of statements from the Russian president that would indicate a shift in Moscow's position. I therefore conclude what we have here from Paul Craig Roberts confirms precisely as I have described it. Here, we have Russia expelling Ukrainian forces from Kursk, which removes a hurdle to peace. This is from the Truth Seeker. Russia's rejection of Ukrainian troops in the Kursk region ends the biggest incursion into Russian territory since World War II, removing another barrier to a peace deal Moscow is reluctant to conclude with so many enemy troops on its soil. The day after Moscow announced the completion of the Kursk operation, President Putin declared a unilateral 3-day ceasefire to mark the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Soviet Union and its allies in World War II. Two Russian sources told Reuters on condition of anonymity that settling the war while Ukraine troops winter in Kursk was not acceptable to the Kremlin. Just over 2 years after Russia's 2022 invasion, really special military incursion, Ukraine on August 6 launched its boldest attack, smashing through the Russian border into the Kursk region, supported by swarms of drones and heavy Western weaponry at its height. Ukrainian forces claimed nearly 1,400 square kilometers of Kursk, but the attack proved costly for Kiev. Russia has since taken around 2,000 square kilometers in Ukraine and now controls a chunk of the country nearly equal to the size of the U.S. state of Pennsylvania, according to Ukrainian open-source maps. Some analysts say Russia's accelerated advance, mainly in eastern Ukraine, was aided by the diversion of Kiev's forces to Kursk. Now, here I have what I can only regard as a bizarre statement from a senator I've long held in esteem, John Kennedy from Louisiana. The situation in the Russian-Ukraine conflict zone will not improve until the United States make it clear to the Russian president that it's ready to take the toughest measures against Russia. This point of view was expressed by Republican Senator John Kennedy. According to him, Moscow is not fulfilling its obligations. The statement I'm about to read I find absolutely incredible, coming from a man I thought to be highly intelligent. The situation will not improve until we make it clear to Putin that we are prepared to turn him and his country into fish food. Frankly, I'm embarrassed that Kennedy said that. He added Putin had broken the promises he made to Trump. I don't think so. The Russian leader is trying to hold on to the captured territories, deceive the former president at every stage, and show disrespect for him. I don't believe that for a second. Moreover, John Kennedy never gave any specifics. For example, what is Vladimir Putin deceiving the U.S. president about? He did not explain what is unusual about the Russian Federation seeking to hold on to liberated territories which according to the Russian Constitution are subjects of the Russian Federation. I think John Kennedy, was a lapse, a mental lapse. This was a blunder. This was a dumb remark from a smart guy. I don't know what to do about it. I only hope he doesn't repeat the blunder. Meanwhile, suspect in killing of Russian general pleads guilty. Claims he was paid by Ukraine. Is anyone surprised? Moscow. A man suspected of killing a Russian general with a car bomb pled guilty to terrorism and said he was paid by the Ukrainian Security Service, Russian authorities said Sunday. The investigative committee said Ignat Kuzin admitted he was paid to kill Lieutenant General Miroslav Moskalik, a deputy head of the main operational department in the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces. Moskalik was killed Friday by a bomb in his car in Balashikha, just outside of Moscow. Ukrainian authorities did not comment on the attack, the second in 4 months, targeting a top Russian military officer that Moscow has blamed on Ukraine amid the conflict between the neighboring countries. And, of course, with ample justification. Meanwhile, Europe pushing delusional U.S.-style rearmament plan. I don't know what's going on here. They seem to have completely lost their way and out of touch with reality. Hawks, Ursula von der Leyen and Kaja Kallas tried to use an emergency bypass measure to fast-track part of a $900 billion plan. Luckily, it didn't work. This is from Responsible Statecraft. Among questions of the over-militarization of U.S. foreign policy and the illusion of global primacy, the European Union is charging headlong in the opposite direction, appearing to be eagerly grasping for an American-esque primacist role. Last month, the European Commission, the EU's executive body, proposed a security action for Europe, a part of the EU's sweeping $900 billion rearmament plan. This ambition, driven by elites in Brussels, Berlin, Paris, and Warsaw, rather than broad support from Europe's diverse populations, reflects a dangerous delusion that, in the face of a purported U.S. retreat, the EU has to overtake the mantle as leading defender of the rules-based liberal world order. Not everybody in the EU is on board, however. Countries like Hungary, Slovakia, Italy, Spain are known for their less than enthusiastic embrace of the rearmament fervor. Last week, a voice of dissent came from the European Parliament, elected directly by the EU citizens, unlike the Commission. The European Parliament Committee on Legal Affairs unanimously rejected the legal basis proposed by the Commission for this plan, namely Article 122 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union. This is more than just an arcane legal, technological, technocratic detail. Article 122 allows the Commission to invoke urgency to bypass the European Parliament and secure approval for its proposal with only a qualified majority in the Council. As the foreign policy decisions are taken by consensus, the purpose of this maneuver is to eliminate potential vetoes from skeptical member countries. But it didn't work. Meanwhile, global powers boost military budgets by record percentages. Again, Responsible Statecraft. 2024 marked biggest increase in global military spending since Cold War's end. Spurred by ongoing wars in Europe and the Middle East, global military spending rose nearly 10% in 2024, the biggest annual increase since at least the end of the Cold War more than 30 years ago, according to the latest in the annual series of reports on world military spending by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Altogether, the world spent more than $2.7 trillion on their militaries last year, a 9.4% increase from 2023. Aren't you glad all that money goes for such a worthwhile purpose? Meanwhile, Republicans unravel a bill to bring the U.S. military budget to over $1 trillion. Antiwar.com. House Republicans unveiled a bill this week that would bring the 2025 U.S. military budget to over $1 trillion. The 2025 National Defense Authorization Act totaled about $885 billion. The new supplemental bill drafted by the House and Senate Armed Service Committees would add another $150 billion, bringing the 2025 budget to a record-breaking $1.035 trillion. The bill includes $25 billion for Trump's vision to create a new missile defense system for the United States, which he has called the Iron Dome for America. Just silly. This is just silly beyond words. The project would be a boondoggle for U.S. weapon makers and would likely kick off a new global arms race. According to The Hill, the bill also includes $33.7 billion for shipbuilding, $20.4 for munitions, $13.5 for innovation, $12.9 for nuclear deterrence, $11.5 for military readiness, $11.1 for building up in the Pacific, $7.2 for aircraft, $5 for the border, $4.5 for the B-21 bomber, $2 for military intelligence, and a trifling $380 million for the Pentagon's annual audit. I have been hoping that Musk would turn his focus to the Pentagon because there's so much waste and corruption there, it would boggle the mind. Meanwhile, when 100 new B-21 bombers just isn't enough. This week in the bunker, one defense contractor bets big bucks the Pentagon will buy more. Bombing builder losing money for now. When playing Pentagon poker, when is a loss not a loss? When reading the tea leaves convinces you today's loss will yield a bigger win tomorrow. You knew this was coming as soon as the Air Force general in charge of dropping nuclear bombs dropped one last month. The Pentagon planned buy of 100 B-21 bombers isn't enough. He really, honestly, truthlessly needs 145 of the bat-winged warplanes. Things haven't changed since that original number was set in 2011. It just won't do in today's world, said General Anthony Cotton, Chief of U.S. Strategic Command, on March 18th. The production rate that was agreed upon was, I think, in that geopolitical environment. It's a little different than the geopolitical environment we will face for decades to come. Hence, I, as a customer, would love to see larger production rates.
Did you know the IRS?
Well, there's a lot of the horrors coming from Israel, continuing, of course. Israeli strikes on Gaza killed 50 in 24 hours amid starvation blockade. It's absolutely insane what's going on here. It's all so blatant. Gaza's health ministry said Israel attacks killed 50 Palestinians, wounded 113 over a previous 24-hour period as U.S.-backed strikes continue to pound the Strip amid a total Israeli blockade. I think there's pollen in the air, and it's affecting me with the change in the weather. Sorry about that. Meanwhile, state and settlers unite to deny Palestinians water in the Jordan Rift, an area touted as a tourism hotspot, abundant with springs. Settlers sabotage and military checkpoints make it difficult for Palestinians to access water. And of course, that's part of their starvation campaign. They want to kill the Palestinians by any means possible. Meanwhile, Smotrich, one of the loons at the top, Israel, will stop fighting once hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are removed from Gaza. He really means once the ethnic cleansing is complete, Israel will have no longer any reason to fight. Everyone will be gone or dead. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich has said Israel would stop its military operation only if hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are removed from Gaza and Syria is partitioned, among other conditions, the Times of Israel reported. With God's help, for crying out loud, God should be on the other side, not that of these monster savages, and the valor of your comrades in arms who continue to fight even now. We will end this campaign when Syria is dismantled, Hezbollah is severely beaten, Iran is stripped of its nuclear threat, Gaza is cleansed of Hamas, and hundreds of thousands of Gazans are on the way out to other countries. Our hostages are returned, some to their homes, some to the graves of Israel, and the state of Israel is stronger and more prosperous. What a crock. How ridiculous. But there you got it. Those are their aspirations laid out in plain and clear language. Meanwhile, World Court, U.S. backs Israel's right to ban the United Nations Refugee Agency from Gaza. This is just disgraceful. Talk about adding insult to injury. Legal advisor to admin argue international law gives Israel the right to decide which organization run relief operations in the Strip. Amsterdam. Israel cannot be forced to allow the United Nations Palestinian Refugee Agency, UNRWA, to operate in Gaza. The United States argued at an International Court of Justice hearing in The Hague. Israel last year passed a law banning UNRWA from operating in the country, saying the organization had employed members of Hamas who took part in the October 7th event, among a series of other accusations, including the organization runs schools that incite to terrorism and perpetuate Palestinians' refugee status by passing it by generation, unlike the rest of the world's refugees. This is just colossally bad that the United States is out there arguing in favor of genocide and depriving aid, even from the United Nations, for the Palestinians is an outrage. Everyone is noticing. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia candidly observes, nothing justifies such barbarity. Saudi Arabia slams Israel's war on Gaza at the International Court of Justice. Saudi Arabia sharply condemned Israel's actions in Gaza in a statement delivered before the International Court of Justice Tuesday, denouncing its blatant violation of international law in the Gaza Strip, the occupied West Bank, and East Jerusalem. Less than a year ago, the court heard that Israel's policies and practices in the occupied territory, including the settlement practices, its continued occupation, and its annexation of parts of that territory, are flagrant violations of international law that must be brought to an end as a matter of urgency, said Mohammed Saud al-Nasser, Saudi Arabia's representative. Sadly but predictably, Israel chose to ignore the court's ruling, showing it considered itself above the law. Absolutely. Yes. Remember, they're responding to God's law.
Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. Lives in a dream, waits at the window, wearing the face that she keeps in a jar by the door. Who is it for? All the lonely people.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network. Real news, real talk, real people. Because you can handle the truth.
Chris Hedges, the West Surface Israel's police with Richard Medhurst. He's talking about Richard Barnhart, Sarah Wilkinson, Asa with Stanley, and Richard Medhurst, some of the canaries in the coal mine for what's to come in the West as the region's elite quickly become Israel's international police. I was just trying to tell the truth as best I could with the facts that we had at that time, and that's it. When police arrested him, I think they're trying to make an example out of me, definitely, Medhurst told Hodges. Medhurst pointed to Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act 2000 in the UK as one of the broad laws being used to silence people like him. If they really want to, they can charge you for just saying a simple fact, just because the fact is uncomfortable to the government. Or perhaps they can twist it into saying you're glorifying a group, but it's not true. He's one of a number calling out. Here we have Scott Ritter. Zionism, the human parasitoid within the U.S. host. Like Greg Felton's book, The Host and the Parasite, the United States is the host on which Israel is feasting and surviving. It's unbelievable. Very, very disgusting. Zionism is a Jewish nationalist movement originating in Europe in the late 19th century, aiming to establish a homeland for the Jewish people by seizing control of Palestine. We know, of course, that's what happened. In many ways, the attack of the jewel wasp, which is a parasite on the American cockroach, resembles the approach taken by American Zionists in transforming the American nation and its people into a zombie-like host for the sustainment of that movement's odious objectives. In place of a dopamine-inducing venom, the Zionists have weaponized the Holocaust, the genocide perpetrated by Nazi Germany on the Jews of Europe, except it's a fraud, it's a fake, it's a hoax. Norman Finkelstein, son of a Holocaust survivor, writes about the phenomenon in his book, The Holocaust Industry, Reflections on the Exploitation of Jewish Suffering, as I've explained time and time again. 6 million Jews weren't put to death. There weren't any gas chambers. These were labor camps, not concentration camps. Meanwhile, we have Tucker insinuating Israel is a disgusting parasite nation.
Or how would we, pay off foreign countries who flood our political system with donations if we're actually spending it to build nice houses for Americans?
Well, but
repair Reading, Pennsylvania. We could be spending it in wherever disgusting Middle Eastern place.
So if you look at place-based financial statements, there's extraordinary opportunity to just.
Or how would we, pay off foreign countries who flood our political system with donations if we're actually spending it to build nice houses for Americans?
Well, but
repair.
He's got it right. Tucker's got it right. Meanwhile, get this. These are from Netanyahu himself. Back in 2001, he asserted America is a thing you can move very easily. In a newly released video, Israeli PM Netanyahu could add some additional strain to the tense relationship between him and then President Obama. In the video from 2001, Netanyahu, who reportedly did not know his speech was being recorded, speaks frankly in Hebrew about a relation with the Clinton White House and the peace process. There's more additional reports. Netanyahu, U.S., easily manipulated. From Al Jazeera. The tape was shot during the early stage of the Second Intifada, when violence between Israelis and Palestinians was escalating. Netanyahu was speaking with settlers who lost family members to Palestinian attacks. Ariel Sharon, the PM at the time, had recently deployed additional Israeli troops in the West Bank. Netanyahu, who did not hold political office when the recording was made, was dismissive of the United States, calling it easily manipulated. I know what America is, Netanyahu said. America is a thing you can move very easily, move it in the right direction. They won't get in the way. Moreover, we have another transcription of him in a bar. 1990 clandestine recording transcribed of Netanyahu at Fink's bar in Jerusalem. They remind me of the immortals. They work as a single unit, not as individuals like we do. I believe this is part of the reason higher up push their fake anti-Semitism narrative like they do. It helps to keep them separated from the Gentiles and more clannish, tight-knit, them versus everyone else. It's important to understand that when Bibi and fellow top Lukitas and Rothschild Khazarian mafia chieftains and kingpins refer to God, they're not referring to the same God most of us think is. He is referring to the secret, evil, bloodthirsty God of the Khazarian mafia, which is Baal, commonly known as Lucifer, Satan, or Moloch, or the great owl of the Bohemian Grove, wrote Preston James. Dear friend, meanwhile, here's more. The United States is the golden calf. Listen to this. This is Benjamin Netanyahu. America is a golden calf, and we will suck it dry, chop it up, sell it off piece by piece until there's nothing left but the world's biggest welfare state that we will create and control. This is what we do to countries that we hate. We destroy them very slowly. That's supposed to be America's ally? That's supposed to be a buddy of Donald J. Trump? This is just outrageous. Meanwhile, Pentagon says U.S. has struck over 1,000 targets in Yemen since March 15th. What in the world is going on here? Why is Donald Trump sending troops to Yemen, where I believe, just like the 1,000 U.S. soldiers that were the first wave sent into Gaza, all of whom were killed, all these soldiers he's sending to Yemen are going to be killed. This is idiotic. I believe he's doing it because though the public has not been told, the USS Harry Truman may have already been sunk by the Houthis. It was disabled. When it was disabled, it was an easy target. it wasn't even moving other than bobbing in the water. I believe it may have been sunk. And that's why Trump reacted so violently and in contradiction to the requirements of the Constitution to seek Senate approval. He has sent troops into Yemen without the approval of Congress. That, in my judgment, is an impeachable offense. Meanwhile, Trump says Mossad agents and warmongers trying to derail Iranian talks. Well, that would sure be surprising, wouldn't it? Mossad agents and warmongers are pushing the U.S. into a conflict with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Those lines aren't coming from state-run news agencies in Tehran, but some of President Trump's closest media allies and supporters. Last week, conservative talk show host Tucker Carlson featured a senior Department of Defense official he claimed was ousted because he was seen as an obstacle to U.S. bombing Iran. Dan Caldwell, a top advisor to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, was removed from the Pentagon earlier this month on charges he allegedly leaked classified information about Hegseth's use of a signal chat, according to several media sources. I've been surprised that it appears Hegseth is among those, along with Vice President Pence and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, to oppose attacking Iran. Excellent. Meanwhile, Trump National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is out in the first major shakeup of Trump's second term. I understand he's been nominated to be ambassador to the United Nations. That would be an improvement. Washington. White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is leaving the admin just weeks after it was revealed he added a journalist to a signal chat being used to discuss military plans, according to two persons familiar with the matter. Thursday, marking the first major staff shakeup of Trump's second term. Waltz came under searing scrutiny in March after revelations that he added journalist Jeffrey Goldberg to a private text chain in the encrypted message app Signal, which was used to discuss planning for a sensitive March 15th military operation against Houthi militants in Yemen. A far-right ally of the president, Laura Loomer, has also targeted Waltz, telling Trump in a recent Oval Office conversation he needs to purge aides that she believes are insufficiently loyal to the Make America Great Again agenda. I'm wondering if Trump is sufficiently loyal to his own agenda. Meanwhile, and I regard this as a great, good, major development, Anti-Semitism Awareness Act in jeopardy after pushback from Democrats and Rand Paul. I like this. The future of the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act was thrown into jeopardy Wednesday after Bernie Sanders and Ed Murkey, together with Rand Paul's backing, introduced a series of amendments to undermine the bill's aim of outlawing criticism of Jews and Israel. There it is, baldly stated, the bill's aim to outlaw criticism of Jews and Israel. Senators on the Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee postponed a final vote on advancing the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act after approving 4 amendments that could jeopardize GOP's support for the bill and leave its future passage once again in question. Excellent. Excellent. Meanwhile, the approved amendments included one by Senator Bernie Sanders stating that it is not anti-Semitic to use free speech rights to oppose the devastation of Gaza, laying out a series of Sanders' specific objections to the war and criticism of Netanyahu. All Democrats and Senator Rand Paul voted in favor. It passed. An amendment led by Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts would oppose the revocation of visas, detentions, and deportation of student and faculty based on protected conduct under the First Amendment. All Democrats and Paul voted in favor. It passed. A third, also led by Sanders, states that the legislation protects rights to distribute written material on campuses or online, to carry out protests in adherence to schools' time, place, and manner restrictions, and to engage in any speech that does not include true threats or incitement of violence, including such speech as communicated through guest speakers, materials used in a classroom or online, or classroom discussions or debates. All Democrats, Paul, and Senators Susan Collins voted in favor. It passed. A fourth, by Sanders, stated that no entity of the federal government can enforce a policy that would compel an educational institution to violate the rights of a student, faculty, or staff member under the First Amendment. All Democrats, as well as Paul and Collins, voted in favor. I am ecstatic. AIPAC threw a fit over the bill getting undermined. Are you surprised? Meanwhile, more than 100 former Israeli spies work at Facebook. Guess what? Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Affiliate marketer without relying on.
Come see us on tour. We're going to be in Bakersfield, San Jose, California, Buffalo, New York, Toledo, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, Liverpool, Birmingham, and London. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Over 100 Meta employees, which is Facebook and Instagram, including head of their AI policy, are confirmed ex-Israeli soldiers, IDF.
Oh, well, as long as they aren't doing it anymore, they could be in charge of our social media.
So now you know why we are completely demonetized. We're not even allowed to promote our videos. Like, we can't pay to promote our videos on Facebook. Did you know that? And so they gave, and they kept, so we used to make not a lot of money. We used to make some money on Facebook to help pay for our company. And it's all gone. And a lot of it has to do with our COVID coverage, but a lot of it has to do with our coverage of Israel and Gaza. And now we know why.
China.
And now we know why. More than 100.
Oh, that's a lot.
Former Israeli spies and IDF soldiers, Israeli spies and former soldiers work for the tech giant Meta, including its head of AI policy. Isn't that wild? A former Israeli spy, head of the AI policy at Facebook Meta. The head of AI policy served in the IDF under an Israeli government scheme. Are there any kind of things that they do that aren't schemes? That allows non-Israelis to volunteer for the Israeli army. Shira Anderson, an American international rights lawyer, is Meta's AI policy chief who voluntarily enlisted for the IDF in 2009. What the effing F? Under a program which enables non-Israeli Jews who aren't eligible for military conscription to join the Israeli army. So she's out.
Nothing you can sing that can't be sung. Nothing you can say, but you can learn how to play the game.
Let me mention 4 of the final 8 stories here. President Trump calls for those who operated Biden's auto pen to be thrown in jail. I think that's an excellent plan. I suspect it was Jill and probably Hunter who are controlling the pen. Remember, we didn't have a president. We had an imposter. This guy was palmed off as Joe Biden, but it wasn't Joe. He had a different shape and size of skull. He had different handwriting. He had different social interaction with Jill. What an insult. Virtually everyone in Washington had to know this was an imposter. Katy Perry's career crashes after fake spaceflight drama. That was one of the worst phony flights of all time. Meanwhile, CDC reports disappointing rates of vaccination for COVID, influenza, RSV. What do they think? They're killing us using the vaccines. Do they think we haven't figured it out? Do they think we want to rush to have ourselves abbreviate our lives? I mean, this is a positive development. Meanwhile, Dr. Judy Mikovits, every vaccine since 1986 has been a bioweapon. Vaccination is not immunization. It is sterilization and extermination. She calls it like it is. Meanwhile, Pfizer scientist whistleblower Justin Leslie joins Alex Jones to reveal how mRNA COVID jabs are poison. Are poison. Indeed. What a terrible, terrible thing. Avoid the vax. Avoid the vax.
Anybody who's halfway informed about health and vitality knows that turmeric is one of the top super nutrients in the world. But
Cornwall then goes on to say that the vaccine was not so effective and says that the mRNA and LNPs are very sneaky.
Only Johnson & Johnson side effect came out quickly, that there was a clot that was happening with Johnson & Johnson's.
Right.
Other than that, mRNA and LNP are very sneaky, I think. We are not still seeing a lot of huge complications.
She goes on to highlight how the clinical trials completely skipped normal clinical trials and went straight up, all at once, to phase 3.
There are 3 types of trials, right? Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We just went straight up. Right?
Yeah.
We just did this, but this is why it takes 10 years for a vaccine to come out.
Yeah.
It takes years of, observation, blah, 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 1, then 2 and 3. Here we are doing everything at the same time, so everybody is as puzzled.
Yeah.
Nobody has, even CEO, finance CEO, and